Angel of light, come into me. Show me what I need to see.
Welcome to the Small Victories Podcast. I'm your host, Pauline Victoria, an inspirational thought leader that offers transformational perspectives based on my unique experiences as a woman born without arms and legs. I feel like my life has been full of small victories that has led me to discover the greatness within. I believe that there is no summit upon which we reach our greatness. I believe it is a culmination of small victories achieved moment by moment when we turn toward the inward battle where we get to choose despair or hope, misery or miracles, defeat or victory. My goal is to awaken your potential, your purpose, and your power so that you can discover the greatness that lives within you. Think of this podcast as your weekly portion of tools, stories, and teachings that help you reflect on the small victories in your life. Thanks for tuning in, and let's begin. Welcome to another episode of the Small Victories Podcast. I'm your host, Pauline Victoria. What if business success didn't come at the expense of people or the planet, but because of how you treat them? In this powerful episode, I sit down with Dr. Bruno Cignacco, international business consultant, TEDx speaker, and author of The Art of Compassionate Business, to challenge the traditional model of leadership and profitability. Backed by over 30 years of experience and rigorous academic research, Bruno offers a refreshing human-first approach to business that proves compassion and commercial success can go hand in hand. Whether you lead a team, run your own business, or want to create more meaning in the workplace, this episode is your invitation to explore how values like gratitude, forgiveness, and compassion can become practical tools for performance and small victories that create a big ripple. Dr. Bruno, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Pauline, for inviting me. I feel very honored to be here. Thank you.
I think we're in a time in our history where we want to do things differently. And people are paying more close attention to the human experience, our planet. And so I think this is a very timely interview for our listener. Thank you for showing up, doing all the work. This is the benefit of podcasting, is that we get to interview experts that have done all the work ahead of time, so we didn't have to. And you get to share the insights and expertise that you've gained from doing that work. So I would like for all of us to just get on the same page first, because you have a book you authored called The Art of Compassionate Business. So I'd like for you to define and paint the picture of what does compassionate business look like for the regular person.
Very interesting question. Let's first define compassion. What is compassion about? Well, compassion is when a person adopts a compassionate attitude toward others. This can be applied in business and non-business environments. This person that is compassionate tend to understand how others think and understand how others feel also. So they connect to others on a mental and emotional level. But also they go one step beyond. They don't only understand how they think and how they feel, but also they understand how others suffer and what type of support this person can provide others in order to make their lives easier. Let's imagine this with a very simple example. Let's imagine that in business, a supplier is delivering the goods to a company late, beyond the deadline that was agreed by these two companies. When the company that is receiving this good late is compassionate with this supplier, will have a talk to the supplier in order to understand why they delivered this good late. What was the reason? Why they were not on time? This compassionate company will also try to help the supplier for them in the future to deliver these goods on time. Now let's compare this with an example of a company that is not compassionate. If the company behaves in a non-compassionate way, will address the supplier in a very punitive way, punishing them. For example, will say, you know what, you deliver this late, we have a contract here, and you know what, we want to apply the penalties. So this means that so that you are prevented in the future from delivering this good late again. We will get very legalistic, means we will apply the letter of the contract. This is wrong. This second approach, the non-compassionate approach, is wrong. Why? Because by being non-compassionate, you tend to break up the relationship with the supplier. And this is quite relevant because the most important factor in business is not technology, it's not artificial intelligence, it's not information, it's not money, but it's the human being. When you build a strong relationship with different stakeholders, individuals, and groups with interest in your organization, these stakeholders tend to support your company in return. They tend to contribute to your company in a positive way. And you build strong bonds that are mutually beneficial for all parties involved. And this is quite relevant because in practice, I will say something that is common sense. You cannot succeed without others. You cannot succeed without the help of suppliers in business, or the help of customers, or the help of employees, or the help of community members or business partners. You need them to succeed. You're not self-sufficient by nature. So this means, wouldn't it be nice to have all these stakeholders by your side, on your side, contributing to your company in a willing way, in a very unconditional way? And how you can do this? The only way to do this is to build strong, long-lasting relationship with different stakeholders, like the first example that I gave, so that these stakeholders feel compelled to contribute in a very unconditional way. So this, and how you build this relationship? By satisfying the needs of each party in this relationship, each participant in this relationship. For example, the needs of the company, but also the needs of the supplier, the need of the company and the need of customers, the need of the company and the needs of its employees. And these needs are multidimensional, include economic needs. For example, if you are paying the supplier, the example of the supplier, you are paying a fair price to the supplier. So this means that you don't try to take advantage from the economic perspective regarding the supplier. But also emotional needs means treating people in a very kind way, affectionate way, and being understanding with them when they make mistakes, supporting them when they have difficulties, recognizing when they make a positive contribution, means being thankful to them and being generous whenever possible. So this means valuing them from the emotional perspective. But also people in business and in life have also mental needs. Let's talk about one employee. When you satisfy the employee's mental needs, you try to provide them with a stimulating project, innovative project, novel projects, so that they can open up their minds and they don't get bored, they don't get demotivated, they don't get continually feeling stuck doing the same repetitive tasks every day. And also people have social needs. So this means social needs, for example, let's talk about the workplace. When a company satisfies employee social needs, they allow them to contribute in projects that are collective projects, where they can interrelate with others, they can connect to others, they can complement their skills and capabilities. But also this company is prone to foster social events where people can talk about non-business topics. For example, their lives, their experiences, their health, their hobbies. And research has shown that when people participate in these events, especially employees, they can connect to one another from equal to equal, like peers, without any hierarchy. For example, the CEO can talk to the customer service officer as equals, and they come back to work knowing each other on a much more personal level, which contribute to higher productivity, higher efficiency, higher competitiveness in the workplace. So this is quite important, and companies that are compassionate focus on two main aspects in business. What I call the quantitative aspect of business, for example, what can be measured precisely. For example, profit, market share, sales, and so on. But also they focus on what I call qualitative aspect of business. Cannot be measured precisely, but these factors are relevant for building a strong, long-lasting relationship with the stakeholder. These qualitative aspects are kindness, support, bravery, generosity, attitude, forgiveness, so on, compassion. Most companies tend to focus exclusively or mostly on quantitative because they are profit-oriented. But there is a famous thought leader that observed, not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. So this means that when you measure everything, profit, market share, and so on, this is quite important, but this is only one aspect of business. You're not taking into account the social aspect of business, that is building strong bond with the stakeholders. And by Applying this principle that I developed in my latest book, The Art of Compassionate Business, such as camaraderie, kindness, forgiveness, generosity, gratitude, compassion, and others, you are building a very solid network of relationship that will help you, especially when your company faces difficult times. So this means that when you have some challenges or you have financial problems or you have some logistic difficulties, this stakeholder will be by your side because you were by their side when they need you.
Thank you for that thorough explanation of compassionate business versus traditional business. I remember when I was working in corporate America when I first got out of college, and I felt this need to create a boundary between my personal life and my professional life. And you mentioned how business should be able to meet their employees at a social level, the social need, and that giving them opportunities to connect outside of business is good. But like just drawing on my own experiences, I got this I didn't want to bring my personal life to the workplace. And my boss got upset at me for doing that. Like she was upset that I wouldn't share more of my personal life. I don't know what the right answer is there. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thought is that employees that feel free to talk about any topic in the workplace are more prone to feel positively connected with this company. There is a concept in business that I explain in detail in my book. That is a concept of psychological safety. The workplace implies that employees in an environment that is psychologically safe can, for example, make mistakes without being fearful of being punished. They can share their ideas. They can also talk about, in appropriate times, about their personal issues. For example, they might have some family problems or they might have some health issues. Whenever possible, they might not do this in the middle of the business meeting, but they can resort to others to talk about their personal difficulties. And in some companies, they go even further. Some companies have counseling services offered to employees free so that they can talk to professional people that they can support them, for example, with mental issues or emotional issues. But this psychologically safe workplace also implies that the employees are open to share their ideas, the non-traditional idea. For example, new ways of doing business, new ways of, for example, connecting to customers. And these employees are not fearful of being ridiculed by this idea. Why? Because the whole environment is open to new ideas, and there is not what many experts call groupthink, that is only one way of thinking of doing business, and this should be not challenged at all, and other ways be censored. So this means psychologically safe workplaces, people are open to give their idea. Companies that are having a psychologically safe work environment have, for example, suggestion boxes where employees can give some ideas and provide some ideas that are innovative, useful, and they are useful for their own position. Why? Because they see day in, day out what is working or what is not working, for example, when they connect to customer or talk to other colleagues and so on. This psychologically safe workplace also implies that people tend to cooperate naturally instead of competing with one another in the workplace. This means that colleagues help each other, they share resources, they work jointly, and they are supporting each other. According to research, in psychologically safe workplaces, employee satisfaction goes up. Customer satisfaction goes up. Why? Because employees that are happy, they are satisfied, tend to serve customers much more effectively. Absenteeism goes down, but it's a very positive thing. Turnover goes down. Stress level go down, which imply lower medical bills. People are less prone to become stressed or to get into burnout, but also, and this impact positively on the bottom line. This means higher profits, higher market share, higher sales. So this means that when people feel safe from the psychological perspective, people feel supported, people feel that they count and their contribution is meaningful, they tend to enhance their resources, the natural resources like creative skills, decision-making capability, critical analysis, and this bring about a positive synergetic effect in the workplace. This means that people bring about a positive cycle. People are more supportive, and the people that are more supportive bring about more supportiveness and more cooperation, more trust, and so on. And so this impact positively on the bottom line. Why? Because the most important factor in business, the building brick, is the human being. When human beings are harnessing their potential, unleashing their potential because they feel at ease, they don't feel in a state of freeze, fight, flight mode. On the contrary, they feel engaged, supported, assisted, recognized. These people tend to give their best unconditional.
So I know a lot of people in my audience are more on the entrepreneurial side, but hopefully as entrepreneurs, we don't stay solopreneurs for forever. We do build a team, we do build a culture. So what could someone, as they build their business, do to create an environment where people don't feel like, oh, if I open up personally about health issues, or maybe I'm going through a divorce, or my child is acting up, or what have you, that they don't use that against you? Because that I think for me, that was the thought, is that I'm not going to share my personal life or give too much because I don't want it to be used against me. And it could be related not necessarily to the overall culture, but perhaps to that particular supervisor. So I know the leadership has to trickle down from the top down to the other departments. So if I were to be creating a business right now and I'm starting to hire employees, what could I do to create a compassionate business? You said suggestion boxes and creating opportunities for people to get to know each other, but is there other things that I could do as a business to create it as a compassionate?
I will tell you a very important factor that should not be present in the workplace for this workplace to be more compassionate. The most important hindrance regarding compassion is fear. Most of the workplaces are fear-driven. So this means that what type of fear you can find in these workplaces? All type of fear. For example, employees are fearful of making mistakes. Why? Because there are policies of assessment or appraisal that are very strict. When employees make mistakes, will be penalized according to these policies. So fear of making mistakes, fear of being outpaced by colleagues. This means that if you are fearful of being outpaced by colleagues, you cannot be cooperating with them. You consider them as competitors. Some of the workplaces are very competition driven. So this means that people, for example, will be competing with their colleagues instead of cooperating with them because they want to get a promotion. So they're very scarce promotion opportunities. So no. Can we offer more promotion opportunities so that people are not competing continually? And this, because competition in the workplace will bring productivity down. People are not sharing resources, they are not acting jointly in a coordinated way. But also some workplaces instill the fear of not rocking the boat. So this means that if I rock the boat, I will be punished. Bring about new ideas. This will be considered ridicule or could be something that will be censored. So making the workplace much more welcoming to new ideas and is more prone to drive this company to become more innovative, to become the leading company in the sector. But also, some employees are fearful of being fired. Some companies have very strict policies. So this means that the employees will be laid off at the minimal mistake. So this means that how you can be feeling connected to others if you are fearful of losing your job, your source of livelihood. So this is not good. So this means that, and also in some cases, employees, as you mentioned, maybe have been your case, doesn't feel trusting to share their own information because in these companies, there is what I call the negative side of politics, which include gossiping, bullying, one-upmanship, turf wars, some people taking the merit of others, and especially at the level of leadership, how you can be trusted in a workplace where there is gossiping and bullying and harassing. These are all doesn't contribute for people to adopt a compassionate attitude toward others. So this is quite important. Another factor that I want to highlight, the second factor that prevents people from being more compassionate is what I call busyness. I give you an example. There is an organization here that I won't mention. I don't want to have any legal problem, but there is an organization here in the UK that every day employees have 8 meetings. 8 meetings. So this means that, imagine, 8 hours working at the workplace. So this means that the employees do not have time, in some cases, to go even to the bathroom because they have to go from meeting to meeting. How you expect people to be compassionate and connect to others on a personal level if they don't have time even to do the basic things? How they can be aware of the importance of relationships in the workplace and building strong bonds? They don't have time, they don't have awareness because the awareness is constrained by the busyness of this workplace. So in practice, it's very difficult. Can we space out the meetings so that we have 5 minutes in the middle of each meeting so that people can have a coffee and connect to colleagues and talk about their weekend and chill out, let the hair down, so that they can come back to the next meeting in a much more revitalized way? Because if not only you're preventing positive relationship to unfold in the workplace, but also these employees are much more prone to lead to burnout. So they will be stressed, they will be tired, they will be demotivated. And when you're tired, demotivated, this thing that you think about is of being compassionate with others because you are depleted, your energy is depleted very low. So these are few things: eliminating fear, because fear is incompatible with compassion, and all this type of fear that I mentioned, but also fostering also this positive principle that I mentioned in the book, generosity. Can we foster an environment where generosity is one of the most important principles? Means, for example, appreciating others people's work. The manager providing, for example, with a letter of appreciation to the subordinate for their contribution, or maybe organizing an event where these employees publicly recognize so that they feel proud of their contribution. There, if you have this type of event, you are satisfying this employee emotional need that can be as important as the economic need, having a good salary.
Know that you have already revised your book at least once, and I'm afraid that your work will never be done because with every generation comes different issues. And I know from experience, because I have a son in the Gen Z age bracket, and apparently there's this concept among the Gen Zers called quiet quitting. Have you heard of that?
Tell me more about this.
Yeah, so quiet quitting is this concept that they will not initiate more work. Whatever the job description is, they will do that. But if you ask them to go beyond that, they will say no. And their idea is they'll stay in a job for a year, but if another opportunity comes to get a higher paying job, they'll leave. And every year to jump jobs in order to increase their salary. So it's very different from my generation, Gen X, where you're like, no, you got to initiate, you got to prove yourself. This idea of feeling like you need to go above and beyond and have loyalty. The new generation, Gen Zers, they're not that. And so I wonder, and I don't know if that's necessarily good because where it comes from is this work-life balance. Like, why stay overtime when the company doesn't care? And it takes away time from being in your personal life. So I'm curious how companies can position themselves where employees don't want to do this quiet quitting.
Okay, this is a very direct way that companies can act on this type of phenomenon, and is having a broader business mission. I talk about this in the first chapter of my book. This is a broader business mission. Let's first define what is a business mission. The business mission or business purpose is the why. Why is this company in the marketplace? What they want to bring to the marketplace. So the traditional business missions are economically based. So this means that they want to become the leading company in the sector, or they want to become the most technologically developed company in this industry. This is only purely economic. The idea that I propose in my book to broaden this business mission and not including only the economic is related to quantitative aspects such as profit, market share, productivity, sales, but including 2 additional layers. The second layer will be social aspects. This means building a strong relationship with different stakeholders such as customers, suppliers, employee, community members, and so on. Building solid, robust relationship with the stakeholders. This will be the second layer, social layer. And the third layer will be environmental layer. This means contributing to the planet in a meaningful way. bringing about a better world, not only for this generation, but for future generation, for generation 100 years time ahead. So for our great grandchildren. So this means that when companies, especially the new generation that are very socially oriented, and in many cases they are environmentally oriented, when you broaden the mission, and it's not only about making money or getting more profit or a much more market share or higher sales, you have a pool of people, interested people in this company and potential employees working for this company that are attracted, especially new generation. Why? Because this company, in each decision that this company will make, will take into account not only the basic aspect of business that are survival or economic success, such as will we make more profit, will reduce the cost. They won't take only this quantitative aspect, but they take into account also, are we building a strong relationship with the communities? Are we appreciating employees when we undertake this project? Are we being positive with our impact on the environment, for example, reducing carbon dioxide emission or introducing green processes or introducing, for example, renewable sources of energy. And this is broadened. And this makes the business mission much more meaningful, especially to new generation that are a bit disinterested in the traditional type of business model, which is only focused on profits. So this means that when you are in a company that is not only very successfully from the economic perspective, but also is helping community, for example, through volunteering, through donation, through socially oriented projects, for example, helping communities in impoverished areas and so on. I mentioned an example in the book. But this company is also caring for the environment. The only planet that nowadays we can inhabit, and probably for a long time, they are not depleting the resources. They are not incurring in negative practices, in some cases illegal practices such as deforestation or environmental pollution and so on. So this means this company, it become much more what I call conscious companies. And this new generation are more prone to join this company because they want to make a change. They want to introduce a positive dent in the marketplace. And they feel that these companies can be catalysts to introduce this positive change from the social perspective and from the environmental perspective.
Thank you for that. It's interesting because every generation has their own unique qualities that they bring to the workplace. And I can imagine how companies have to be constantly thinking outside the box of the traditional way they would do business in order to invite and motivate people to give their best to the company. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And these conscious companies, according to my research, tend to have companies that have a mission that is economically based, socially based, but also with the environmental aspect, tend to have better brand image, higher reputation. Why? Because they are not only looking for more money, more profit, more market share. And when companies have high reputation, according to research, too, tend to attract more talented employees, higher quality investor, and they tend to attract customers what are known as conscious customers that will decide with their wallet not only to buy products that are useful for them, but they will buy from companies that are making a positive change in the world from the social perspective, from the environmental perspective. So this means that these companies are more prone to attract high-quality stakeholders, high-quality business partners, high-quality investors, high-quality suppliers, high-quality employees, and high-quality customers. And this is very important. It's a positive cycle. A positive cycle, this stakeholder will help the company become even much more well-known, much more recognized, and not only from the economic perspective, but from the reputational perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I know personally, I would spend more money on buying something from a certain company versus somewhere I can get it cheaper. So price doesn't always dictate where you get your customers. It really it goes much more beyond just the price
Yes.
point. Thank you so much, Dr. Bruno. Is there any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners before we say goodbye?
Yes, any person working in a company, for a company, in any position, the executive position or any other of the layers of this organizational structure, should regularly ask themselves these type of questions. I call them self-reflection questions. They are mentioned in my book, The Art of Compassionate Business, and they are very important because by asking themselves this question, they broaden their awareness. A very important question is, how can I add more value to different stakeholders? How can I be more appreciative? How can I be more supportive? How can I be more compassionate and generous with others in this workplace and outside? Why these questions are so important? Because this brings about a positive cycle of reciprocity. When you are generous to others, when you are kind to others, when you are supportive and grateful to others, these people are more prone to behave in the same way, alike. Why? And so you create more robust relationship, long-term relationship with different stakeholders, and this impact positively on productivity levels, on sales levels, on customer satisfaction, customer loyalty, and so on. On the contrary, when you don't ask this question, and by default you get taken over by this busyness that is very common in the workplaces, you are more prone to act in a self-centered way without caring for others, try to act in a non-compassionate way. And this has the opposite effect. When you connect to others in a non-compassionate way, you focus only on quantitative aspect of business, what can be measured, what can be counted, and this doesn't bring about more cooperation, more trust, much more rapport, and meaningful connection with others.
Thank you for doing the work that you've done. And like I said, I feel like even though you revised it once, there will probably be more revisions to come. Your work will not be done. So thank you for doing what you've already completed and continuing to evolve it to meet the needs of people and the planet, Dr. Bruno. Yes, thank you. If you've ever felt like kindness doesn't belong in business, think again. What Dr. Bruno reminded us today is both deeply human and surprisingly practical. That compassion is not a weakness, it's a strength, and it belongs at the heart of every profitable, purpose-driven business. You don't need a title to lead with compassion. You don't need permission to extend grace, and you don't need to compromise your bottom line to put people and the planet first. Every time you choose compassion over ego, understanding over urgency, and generosity over judgment, you're building a better business and a better world. And that is a small victory that leads to lasting impact. Thank you for joining another episode of the Small Victories Podcast. And until we meet again, be blessed.
Come into me, show me what I need to see.